What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in for episode 4 of Doctor's Office Vlog, Succeeding as an Independent. Apologies for the delay on this. I put the questions out on last Saturday, and now it's Thursday. It's been a very busy week here at the studio, working on this 24-song film library for Megatracks, a bunch of country Christmas stuff, and Modern Country 2 album. Very cool. Great producer, great songwriters, great team in Nashville, so I'm pretty stoked about that. So first thing I want to talk about actually is this, because this is a something I've been considering all week in preparation for this video log, and it's that understand the difference between an account and a client. Okay, so subcontractors, contractors, partners. When we're working as a producer or any really work for hire, you are not a partnership, specifically because partnership means benefits, specifically government mandated benefits, such as health insurance if you're going over a certain amount of hours, or any of the tax programs, Social Security, 401k, all that kind of stuff. So it's rare that you're going to be in a position where that's offered to you. So one of the things in my contract actually is I specifically state we are not working as a partnership to my subordinates, meaning any musicians I hire or any assistant engineers I hire or a studio or whatever. So just understanding that quickly, contractor, subcontractor. Subcontractor would be that you've received a contract and now you are going to contract out some work. You're going to delegate. You're going to subcontract underneath that, hopefully out of the expenses side of things and not out of your profit side of things. But let's just say for us, you are going to subcontract out someone to do vocal tuning for you, or session musicians. This is really just want to understand the tree here. So work for hire contract is super important. They need to waive any rights to the session in exchange for monetary compensation. So this is really important. And this lingo specifically for musicians, session musicians, is important because if someone, and I'll use an example here in a second, creates a hook that is the signal for the song. So what I mean by that is like, for example, there's a story that like the most expensive $50 guitar riff ever was the guitar riff on the beginning of Garth Brooks' Friends in Low Places. Bow, down, down, down. Then it goes to that weird augmented chord, but it's like just that lick. And the dude did it on the fly in the studio and goes, well, what if we started like this? Do-do-do-do, right? And that song was a mega hit, and had he been a songwriter, it would have made him a mega millionaire, okay? But because he was a session player, work for hire session player, in the contract he waived all rights, which means he didn't get a fair share of songwriting or publishing. Now, to you session players, this is not me saying that you should be arguing for these things, because you won't get the gig. Anytime that a song is already written, it is completed, it's had a work registration with a copyright, or maybe the copyright's in progress, or anything, really. Even as a producer, if the song is written before it comes to me, I, as a producer, become an arranger. I'm not a producer. An arranger on a modern contemporary work does not get any songwriting or publishing. Now, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, if someone were to get a classic and they were to rearrange, recut, or whatever, I believe there's a 10% split that comes to the producer slash songwriter arranger on redoing an old standard if it gets commercially released. But double check me on that, because I just was talking to the guy at Megatracks and he was mentioning this, and just double check me on that one. I haven't been in that situation before. So going back to it, an account and a client, and I want to make this distinction really, really big. Clients are one-off, or as we talked about in previous episodes, they're seasonal. These are episodic clients that come in, and usually you're talking about once a year, twice a year. These are larger projects. And I'm not talking about the average rapper that comes in working on a mixtape and comes in once a week, twice a week until it's done. Granted, when that's done, they're usually gone. So it's a smaller scale of the same thing. But let's just say, let's think about album cuts, all right? One client comes in, brings an album cut, you do the whole record, They leave, they're stoked. Yes, they're going to spread your name, but they're going to go out and they're going to market that album for a good year. And if it's successful 2 years while they're working on new material, that they come back to you 2 years later. Case in point, I had a client, I was just looking, 2013, Fred Buer did a great record, got to use Tim Pierce, which was amazing. And naturally, the Tim Pierce songs are like the best songs in the whole record. And now he's just called me and said, hey, I want to start working on another 10 songs for a new record. It's been time. So I believe you're going to start seeing as a producer, as a mixer, that you're going to see about a 2-year return on these clients, unless they're going one off, and then you're going to fill a record. Once that record is done, they're going to go try and get return on their investment. They're not just going to come in, jump into the second record. So do not count on one client returning immediately. They need time. You got to recoup their expenses. So it would always behoove you to be working on the client that's coming in after that during the whole time, so that when that contract is over, you know who's coming in behind. Currently, I'm juggling like 3 or 4 clients at the same time, in addition to this film library thing, which is difficult to say the least. And what I've found works for me, and this is everybody's different, is that I plan my days and I allot a certain amount of time for each of the different ones so that I do not drop the ball on any project. That means you have to have your calendar working and you have to work that calendar. I'm using the Mac OS calendar because it links to my phone, it links to this laptop, it links to my studio computer. So that's pretty cool, the iCloud functional there, so that I just type everything in as I'm doing it, no matter which station they all update. And then in my phone, and then I get alarms so I know what session I have coming up in the morning, I know what session I have coming up tomorrow, I know where I'm at. And it gives you a time frame, because if I only have 4 hours to spend on one mix in one day, and then I'm going to go to the next one, the alarm goes off and it says, okay, session 2 starts now. And this does a couple things. One, putting a little bit of a deadline pressure on you makes you work a little faster and not be so scatterbrained, especially when we have Facebook. The next thing it lets you do is it lets you, again, not drop the ball. You have someone who is managing you. You're doing it yourself. You're just using your calendar and your tools to manage your time. When we have multiple clients, we have to all move forward at the same time, unless you can find a way to stagger them so that you do one the next. Now, I would say this is better, but some people work different ways, and sometimes you just have 3 people coming in the door at the same time, and you want to accommodate them, obviously, because we want everybody to be happy. We want to continue our business. So anyways, back to clients and accounts. So the difference between a client and an account is that clients are great to keep money coming in, and especially when you're at a place in the month where you're like, okay, my bills are coming, like right now, it's, what is it, the 14th, it's the Ides of May coming. That means some people are getting paid today. You could expect phone calls, right, 1st and the 15th. And the other side of it is you have bills coming due on the 1st. So you're like, okay, I've done a lot of great work, but I need to start invoicing. I need to start getting my money incoming so that I can pay my bills on the 1st. So naturally, in the last 3 episodes, we've talked about ways to go out and find music, business, find income for the studio. We're going to go to the rehearsal halls. We're going to do all that stuff that we talked about. Go back and watch those episodes if you're catching up now. We talked a lot about that. But accounts are really important because these are the fishermen. So when we talk about the what do they call them? Got to draw a blank. Allegories? Anyways, we talk about the smart fisherman goes where the fish is, to catch fish, to bring it back. That's why we go to the rehearsal halls. It's where the musicians are that are caring about their project and they're doing all this. I want you to look at accounts like finding other fishermen who are willing to let you middleman their fish or whatever. So what I mean by that is that the hardest part about this business as we grow as independents and as we are coming up in the game, and I like to think about it as like a tier system. So just to get in my head real quick, I consider it like tier 1 would be the famous guys, right? The Chris Algies, the JJPs, the top of the chart dudes who can walk into any, indie or major record label and they got work. If they need it, they can find it, okay? That's not always true because sometimes you get priced out. Sometimes you don't know what's hot. If you're not on the ball with what's taste-based currently and contemporary and competitive in the industry and radio and all that, then you will get pushed out for the younger, hotter dude who's coming up, or dudette. Anyways, tier 2 would be the staff producers, the people that are next in line to become tier 1 guys. These are people who've already made it. They've got platinum records. They've got possibly a Grammy nomination. These are the tier 2 guys that can command a higher price, that their name and their brand is successful in its own right. They vary in talent level. Some of them are excellent. Some of them lucked into it. Okay. Some of them, assisted on something and then got bumped up and they never really earned that spot. But some of them are incredibly talented, like you. So tier 3 guys would be guys like me who are ready to move into the tier 2 spot should the opportunity arise. We're just waiting to organically grow there. Okay. So good businesses, able to support their families, whatever, or people that are just needing a leg up, an opportunity to start, which there's a lot of us out there, a lot of different states, and we're just organically growing until one of our clients magically lands the lottery ticket and we get to ride that fame because we did the record. So tier 4 guys would be the part-timers, the hobbyists, and then beneath that I would say students who are working on their stuff. I say all this is that we're looking at accounts. Accounts would be, like I said, the big fishermen that can pass you business. So as a pro mixer, who would be really important fishermen for you to get to know? Well, producers across the board. And the goal of this would not be that you would find a producer who does one record one time and then moves on and starts producing video. But if you find a producer that is someone who is out there and working and working and working, and you become their right hand, someone that passes you business, that grows, that this is a true repeat client, because this is not someone who walks into the shoe store and wants one pair of shoes. This is someone who is their own shoe store but wants to outsource their supply from you. Okay, so that means when I say an account is something ongoing, something that is not a single one-off seasonal client, but someone who is also fishing for leads and trying to get new clients every day, trying to move product, all right? And then if you can get all of their business in addition to all this other business, now granted, you're only going to get a fraction of their business. If you're a mixer, you're not going to get the producing business, right? But this relationship will grow, and eventually, if the guy can trust you and can maintain where you're at, then they're going to start giving you the smaller production contracts because they know you can handle it. They're like, dude, I just don't have time for this. I'm so busy thanks to you because you've helped me raise my quality and done all this stuff. I'm just going to start shipping off the smaller stuff to you in addition to all the mixing on my bigger stuff. So another one of these, like I've been dealing with this week, is going to be like a film library, a TV film library. Someone that amasses mass amounts of music. They need quality control. So, like for my contact, they have an in-house quality control lead engineer. He's a buddy of mine. I talk about Derek Jones a lot. Now, he does engineering. He plays instruments. He also does quality control. So when they subcontract to guys like me to come in and mix 24 songs for them, all those songs are going back through the lead engineer for quality control to make sure they're in the game as far as frequency, make sure everything's consistent because, you know, the library's got to have a specific sound. All of them, those go to mastering so they can have even more quality control and consistency. But back to it, that guy, that engineer, that lead dude is your dude. Okay, that's the guy that can get you in the door and can say, look, I'm the quality control guy and I'm telling you that this dude right here can do it. And that's what happened for me, is that I was basically, for lack of better sales terms, I've been working this account for, I'm 6 years back in this studio back in LA. I've been working this account for 6+ years because I met Derek on a forum before I moved back to LA when I was in Nashville. I've been farming this account for 6 years and it finally kicked. Why? Because over the last 2 years, while I was, as I was building this relationship with the owner of Megatrax, and I was kind of making sure that they knew that I'm into you guys, I respect what you do, Derek's taught me a lot, on and on, and I want to be a part of the team. Excuse me, a little cough there. I want to be part of the team. I would love to work here. It's a great account. They're good people, and the quality of the music's very high. So the job is actually much easier than other jobs because there's consistency because they have quality control. So also, the amount of music they're creating on a daily basis is so large that they couldn't possibly do it to themselves. They have to outsource, but at the same time, there's going to be more and more and more and more business. So for an independent person who's not dealing with a label, these subcontracting companies are going to be very, very handy in getting you more ongoing business as the time comes. So the next thing I want to talk about is the questions from our 4 questioners. So this week, our first question was from William Vargas. Thank you for that. William asked me about how much money do you budget for the artist's comfort, for looks and vibe in your studio? It's an interesting thing. I don't really consider that, although I would consider aroma candles, cleaning supplies, janitorial stuff, light bulbs, trash bags. These are very important things, and I don't know, in my opinion, you don't really budget for those. You just make sure that you have them, at a stock of them. So like there should always be a smell good candle in the studio, and if it runs low, you go get another one. So when I'm saying budget for those, I think what's more important is for you to understand your own usage and how fast that you go through these things on a regular basis, cleaning your studio on the regular, maintaining the level of professionalism for your clients, so that you need to start tracking your budget on this. More than budgeting money for it, you need to just start actually documenting your budget for it. Save your receipts. Now, this is 2 reasons why. 1, all these are expenses for your studio and can be written off of your taxes at the end of the year and save you money. And 2, you need to know so that you can build a budget for these things. And in reality, eventually you're going to have interns and assistants, and you need to be able to hand them funds, or hand them a company card, or hand them cash or whatever, and send them out to go get this stuff and bring it back to you. And that has to be accounted for. So in building your expenses, you have to document this. There's a minimum standard of cleanliness that you should enforce upon yourself, and creature comforts. I like to keep bottled water in the studio, and I do not charge for it because everybody always asks for water, and so I always end up going to get water, and so eventually I'm just going to go get a case of water. So, I probably spend $10 a week on a case of water, $10 a week on a smell good candle, although those last more than once a week, twice, maybe once a month, a smell good candle, vacuuming, dusting, I don't know. Build your expenses, and this should be a separate column from marketing budget, because this is operating capital. This is stuff that it takes. This is CDRs. This is all in that category. So looks and vibe should reflect you and your personality and the kind of music you like to make. If someone walks into your studio and it just looks like a generic studio, then there's no real difference in the studio than the studio next door that's generic. They could go anywhere. And they don't really know you as a producer, as a mixer. What are your tastes? What do you like? What music do you value? What instruments do you play? What art do you perceive as valuable in comparison to the music you make? What things have you brought to the table that inspire an artist? So there's some silly ways to do this, but for me, I have my favorite vinyl up on the wall, and because I have a fairly large vinyl collection from when I used to DJ, and so I just got famous records that I enjoy, and I just have them up on the walls everywhere, and you can see them, and it's cool. In the same way that on my screensaver for the studio computer, the screensaver is my iTunes library covers, because it's mesmerizing. You stand here and the people look at that and they forget what they're doing, and they see all this great albums. And what's interesting is that as you're looking at that screensaver, you notice graphic trends, which is really trippy to kind of look at. So when you're looking at CDs or you're giving opinions for your artist, you can point them to the trends, which is kind of neat. But back on topic. So vibe really should reflect the kind of studio / business / person / personality / taste that you give. So for me, I'm a trained martial artist, right? And I wear this because I got class tonight. And I've practiced Buddhism, was born a baptized Christian. So for me, I have a lot of Buddhist stuff because I like the tea table idea in my studio, because I like to have a place for that. And what I mean by that is food, bev. I have a coffee, tea, hot water table. It's over there. It's an area, and there's a Buddhist statue there. So when you're coming to it, and you can reflect on that while you're doing it. It's like being in the moment. But that's just one way to do it. Over here, I have an espresso station. I feel like making a latte. I got lattes here. It's stocked and ready. If a client wants a latte, I make them a latte. I used to work at Starbucks. I make a pretty good latte. But that's me. That's the whole point. I did tea. I worked at Starbucks. My guitars are up on the wall decoratively so I can get at them. 1, easy access, and 2, they look cool. Guitars look cool. Studios want instruments. That's the whole point, right? It's inspiring to look at a cool Telecaster. The colors I picked made sense for me and what I wanted to represent. I did a little bit of color psychology choices because I wanted people to be passionate, and I wanted people to be what was the right word? Darn, I'm slipping today. Sorry, guys. I wanted them to be able to speak quickly when they have inspiration and not hold back. There's a word for it, and I'm missing it today. But so, these colors help, red and black, and these, pick your colors to match you. I love studios with a personality. I love the Moroccan room at Energy Studios. It's amazing. You walk in there and you're like, this is amazing. Why? Because it's not the same old thing. Make it your own, all right? I took a note here, William Vargas, rules versus creature comforts. Just make sure when you're in your business mind that you have rules and policies to enforce these creature comforts. And what I mean by that is that some studios are going to charge for all this stuff. So it's either included or it's an honor system. If there's an honor system, have a clipboard, tell them what you got, put it in so that you can bill them for it. If you have large sessions and there's going to be a lot of work, you should be billing them for that. The client is responsible for all of their expenses. You're not running a food and beverage stand unless, you are. And anyways, but you're not responsible for that. So for me, I give water because it's like whatever. $10 a week's no big deal. But if you're going to stock a refrigerator, then you absolutely should be invoicing and charging. And the only way to know that for sure is that at the end of the day, you have to tally what you had, which means at the beginning of the day, you have to tally what you had, and you have to note the deficit in numbers between. So if you're going to take that on, you better be good with it. You better be rigid with it. You better have a system, a clipboard, or whatever. Maybe you're just taking a photo at the end of the, in the beginning and end of the day on your phone, and that's how you know and you count or whatever. But the point is that that's an expense, and you shouldn't be coming out of your pocket $10, $20 a day. That adds up over a month. You should be billing for that. So make sure that you have policy rules, and that goes back to enforcing those policy rules when you do the client pitch and you go through and you sit them down and you've got them signed in the contract. The addendum on the contract is your studio policies. One of the studio policies that should be on a separate page that they sign of acknowledgement, not sign as a contract, but sign that they've read and they approve and agree to be bound by this, and probably there should be a credit card on file. And that would be your food and beverage policies, along with your billing policies. So for me, it says food and beverage are only allowed on the tea table and nowhere else in the studio, because you're not setting a soda on my console. Come on. But you'd be amazed how many times people have gone to set a latte on top of my Focal SM9s, and I'm like, excuse me, can we not put a drink on the main? But all good. People make mistakes. Always be kind. Always be polite. Remind them of the rules, but, please no. Anyways, back on track. William, thank you for the question. I hope that I answered it in that manner appropriately. Okay, so moving on to question number 2. My good friend, super producer Firetracks, he has been around for a long time in the Pensados group. So make sure you hit him up. He's a cool dude. Firetracks says, with the state of the industry, is songwriting a good choice? Okay, so you asked a much longer question, but I want to break it down into this because we need talking points. So this current state of the industry, as my viewpoint of the current state of the industry, is that sales, and I'm talking about mechanical sales, are at an all-time low. The album has never sold less. We're down, we're down, we're down. I think 2014 was the record, and we are down from that 10%. So Ken Lewis even posted a metric that had like 200,000 units as like the top seller. So just, it's bleak right now. But that's because we haven't really found where we're going. We haven't found the next path where we can bring royalties back for mechanical sales. However, radio hasn't changed. TV and film still haven't changed. They're paying great. And the thing is that TV and film have large budgets. So this becomes all about networking. It becomes all about who do you know. But back to your question, state of the industry, is songwriting a good choice? I think it is a good choice. I think that if you are called to be a songwriter and you're talented as a songwriter and you're not just blowing smoke and you're not faking it, but you really are supposed to do this. Half of that is confidence, half of that is fate. I know a few great songwriters who are not great and they locked into it. So I'm saying, like, if you're really, really great and you're supposed to do this, yes, songwriting can be very lucrative. Only two ways. One, you need to be in a city where you can co-write. So Nashville is the songwriting capital of the world. So I would say songwriting is not a good choice if you are a Miami resident. Songwriting is not a good choice if you're a San Francisco resident. Songwriting is not a good choice if you live in Akron. Songwriting is a good choice if you live in Los Angeles, New York, Nashville. What I think Vancouver's got a really big music scene. If you want to write blues music, I'm sure Memphis would be fine. If you like doing R&B, hip-hop, I think Atlanta's got a really big scene there. My point of saying all this is that songwriting is only a good choice if the numbers are in your favor, such as if you're in the hub of a music-centric city where labels are, and all the artists are revolving like flies on ish. So same thing for producers. You need to be in a place where all of the big fish are. Go where the big fish are. So for songwriters, same thing. The chances of you making good money on songs increase the wider you spread the net. For songwriting, the more songs you've written, the more chance you have that one of them's going to go. And the beauty of writing songs and being a songwriter is you're not required to finish. This is simply a beginning. Yes, you better finish your song, but you're not required to produce, mix, master. That means that you can write 2-3 songs a day that are amazing and then get them out to a publisher, get them out to a song plugger, and they'll take care of the rest, okay? But here's the trick. Where songwriting careers are really made is the young infant people that are just getting into it, maybe you're super talented, is to co-write. The co-write is incredibly powerful, and the advice is always co-write with as many people as possible. And if it's not a good song, you don't co-write with that person again, but you don't get to find that out until you've done. I got a friend named Jen who had a #1, and she was the pinch hitter, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's right, based on what I remember of the story she told me, is that they were working on a song and they couldn't finish it, but they were close, and so they brought Jen in and she buttoned it up for them. And in exchange, naturally, she got a fair split because she refused to sign anything. So she got her Library of Congress regimented 1/3 because there was 3 writers. That song went #1. It went #1 on billboards. It went #1 on the country charts. It went #1 on the radio. I mean, it was all over the place for a long time. It was a great tune. Cheers to you, Jen. You did a great job on that. And while I will not disclose what she told me in confidence about the income level, I will tell you that it was darn good. So these things happen when you're networked with all the other songwriters, when people like you, when they want to be near you, when they can count on you, when you come in with good ideas and you can home run hit. Is songwriting a good choice? Yes, if you can songwrite at a level that pays money. If you're songwriting for all of the local musicians, no, it is not a good idea. Why? Because you're counting on one of those local musicians to go famous. If you're that good that you're songwriting for the local musicians, cut your chops, get good at it with the local musicians, and then move on up into the big leagues and start co-writing. Find out the writers on all your favorite songs and contact their publishing companies and ask to set up a co-write. I know it sounds crazy. Can I do that? Yeah. Go to the Wikipedia page. Look at who the writers are. Find them on Facebook. Find them on their personal website. Figure out who the publishing company is that represents their interest and contact them and say, hey, I would like to set up a co-write with Bob. It's that simple. I swear to God, it's that simple. And the thing about it is that, yes, you may not get all of them to come to you because they may not like the music you make. And that's okay. It's a numbers game. Be honest. Be good-hearted. Be kind. Be inspirational in that way when you go to them. Be like, look, you really are an important songwriter to my life, and I would love to co-write with you for a catalog, and I'm trying to get placements. So the question they're going to ask you when you co-write, and this is the first question that is always asked, is how are we going to monetize this? Because no great songwriter who is receiving BMI checks or ASCAP checks, who is getting paid up front to go write for film libraries or getting really good back end off of major label stuff, they're not going to hand you their best work because they don't need to be taxed on it by giving you that gift and then you take a chunk of it and they're making less. They don't need you to come in on the end of a great song. What they're going to do at this point is that you're going to start from scratch in hopes that what you do together is good, and then that is saleable in some fashion. So I approached a great songwriter last week who inspired me, and he asked me this, how are we going to monetize this? And I said, well, this song specifically is going to go to an act that I'm working with, and it's going to go to radio, and they're selling it, so you'll get mechanical royalties on sales that is, mandated, the songwriting publishing royalties on a sale, and you're going to get radio spin stuff that'll go through BMI. So the question there is, do you have an answer for this? When they ask this question, how are we going to monetize this? You need to be able to confidently say, well, it's going to just sit on a shelf. I really hope this artist does something. No. You have to be able to come with something. And if you're not coming with something, they're going to say no. So they don't have time for that, because during that time, this songwriter probably could have written for somebody else, and that's the end of that. Okay. So nobody's going to do anything for free. Make sure you have a good monetization stream. Go to the hub for co-writers. I talked about that. Network dependent. I talked about that. It's all about who you know, because the money makers are going to try and keep that to themselves until they like you. TV and film. Yes, it's a good idea. Again, you have to network into that, but it's good money. Okay. Fire tracks. I hope I answered your questions there. Dan Ewins. Ewins? I hope I said that right. E-W-I-N-S. Dan Ewins. What's up, buddy? What about pricing yourself out of a job? Okay, so when you're bidding, this comes back to what we talked about in the previous chapters, and one of it has to do with making sure that you qualified your buyer. Step one, qualify your buyer. This happens again. We say this every time. First 2 emails, you need to qualify your buyer. Because there's no point of you bidding on a project that can't afford you, unless you are specifically trying to tell them to go away. Fair enough. Like, if you go in for a Toyota Corolla and the guy tries to sell you a Bentley, it's just not going to happen. And that was dumb because it was a waste of time. Not dumb because you should never have tried that sale, but dumb because he didn't actually pay attention. So that was a weird, example. Coming back to the question, let's do the scenario. Okay, so you get a client inquiry from your marketing, your billboard that's out there or whatever. And the email comes in and they say, hey, my name is Dan and I do music and I'd like to talk to you about working together. What are your rates? They always ask that. What are your rates? And then you write back to them and you don't tell them your rates. And what you do is we ask leading questions. We do this, watch our previous stuff. Leading questions to get them to open up. And now they've told you about themselves. You've gone and visited their social media. You've done some research. You searched them on Facebook based on the email address they gave you. You've looked at their profiles to see that they're not bigots and that someone you don't want in your studio. You've gone through all the steps of qualifying the personality of the buyer. And then you want to make sure you qualify the fact that they have a budget. And you're going to say to them, are you currently signed to a label? Do you have a manager, agent? Who is funding your project? It's always a good question. It's, people are afraid to ask it, but you have to ask it. So at this point, they're going to say, well, it's self-funded. I've got a couple $1,000s in savings, or I haven't saved anything for it, but I think I can budget a few $100s a week. They're going to tell you. So the first part of this is qualify the buyer. What are you in the market for today, sir? Well, I was looking for a pair of loafers. Okay, let me show you the loafers. Don't take them to the tennis shoes. So again, this comes back to the same thing. What are you in the market for? And I ask them this. I say, what are your goals for this project? In a perfect world, what would you like to end up with after you do this recording? I mean, get them to open up. Leading questions, open up. Tell them what they want, because people will tell you, just got to ask. At which point, you, knowing your own value, can weigh whether or not you should take this client based on the budget they've presented. Now, there's a little bit of a working room in there. If the client says, well, I've got $1,000 and you're like, I want to do $1,500 of work, I wouldn't send them away. Can you do it for their budget, or can you get them to come up? Can you do an upsell? That's what we call that. Call that an upsell. Would you like fries with that, sir? Yeah, I would like fries with that. I wouldn't plan on getting fries, but fries sound good. Would you like mastering with that? I hadn't thought about mastering. Well, let me tell you, I've got a great mastering engineer. He gives me a special rate. He does all my music. what's great is that I can count on him for quality control. So it's not very expensive because it's an ongoing relationship that I've worked on. I can happily extend that to you. It's a nominal fee of X, okay? Make sure you sell the services, or you're going to master it yourself, which is cool, but it's going to be included. Yes, it's quick and dirty, but the truth of the matter is that all music we make, we want to release. So all things considered, I might actually still have him master a record even if there's not budget for it, because in the long run it makes the record better and I have more chance of royalties and word spreading. And man, what a great sounding record, says the friend who now comes to you and wants to hire your services. So I don't always do that. I'm a pretty good mastering job, but everybody can do their own deal. Back to pricing yourself out of a job. Qualify your buyer. Next thing you need to do is remember, we have to understand what our base value is. Now, I explained this in, I believe, episode 2. We covered a pretty large chunk of this. But remember that you can't negotiate without knowing what your bottom line is, okay? So to understand your bottom line, we have to do the equation, which is your expenses divided by 160 equals your hourly rate. Then you have to know how long it takes for you to do every job. I know it takes me roughly 2 to 3 hours to tune properly a lead vocal, and then it takes me another 2 to 3 hours to tune a background vocal stack. I know I spend about 2 to 4 hours quantizing drums if I do it the right way, but it 15 to 20 minutes if I use a quick and dirty beat detective and then I just kind of fix a few things. So you have to know how much time you spend on your services, and then you have to know what your base value is. So that way, when you've qualified the buyer, you can weigh the two. You can say, look, the guy has $1,000. He's asking for $2,000 worth of work, and I cannot justify, because I can't work at 50% value, because 50% value that I'm giving him would drop me $10 below my minimum acceptable wage for working on this project. So at this point, you know the discrepancy. Now, let me go back one second and make sure I said that correctly. Let me go back and make sure I said, sorry, I got a ding and it screwed me up. Knowing your value, qualify the buyer, find the discrepancy. Then when you come to the negotiating table, you can say, look, here's the deal. I'm going to give you a discount because I want to work with you, because I enjoy making your music. And if you don't take the client. But I do, so I want to work with you. So here's the deal. The lowest price I could take for this would be halfway between whatever we set up in the deficit. And the reason is that it's going to cost me this many hours of man work to do this, and I have to fill that time to cover my expenses, studio power, lighting, gear, whatever. I have to cover those expenses, and unfortunately at this price point, it doesn't cover my expenses and my wage. So I would love to take your record the lowest I could possibly take it for. Just skip the negotiation. Just flatline it for them. The lowest I could take this for is 150% of what you're asking for, not 200% what I was asking for. So then they will either say yes or no, okay? So there's always the rule of 3, remember? So, you ask once, you ask twice, and you ask a third time, and if you ask a third time and they don't say yes, don't ask again, and that's becoming annoying, right? We just don't like it. So at this point, they would then say, I'm talking to somebody else, and he could do it for $1,300 when you're asking for $1,500, and you would then go back to your math and say, look, at $1,300, did I cover my expenses? If the answer is at a certain point, yes, I covered your expenses, and you would take the gig for that much because you might lose it to another producer, two things are happening. One, the client is manipulating you because they're shopping around and they want to get the best value. They don't want to get the best product. So understand that. I would then do an objection override technique at this point and say, look, here's the deal. There's a reason why the other producer is at the price he's at. And there's a reason why I'm at the price I'm at, and I can't go below this value because you've already said that. So you have to stand to it, because if you don't stand to it, you're lying. Fair enough? So if you set your floor and you go beneath that, then you're lying. So Don't lie. Be real. This is my floor, and I can't go below that. So then objection override technique, as we've talked about before, is a leading question that logically gives you as the right answer. So in this scenario, you would ask them, what is most important to you in a record? Is an extra $200 in the grand scheme of things really that important when it comes down to the quality of your art? And they're going to be like, no, my art is worth more than that. And say, so if I can give you a quality that is considerably higher than my competitor, would you not choose that one? You know what I mean? Set it up that way. I'm kind of drawing a blank on this one. I have to probably think about it a little more. But say if I could deliver you a quality of audio creativity and talent that is a little bit more expensive, but is so much better, you'd be a fool not to take it. And I would ask this question somehow, and I probably have to think about this for a second. But I think you guys are catching on to how I'm objection overriding technique. Get this guy going. And again, this should be true. Don't be lying because your music, if your music's not as good as the other dude and he's priced down on you, you probably need to let that one go. So I would hopefully wanted to have had a chance to know my competition in this point, so that you could know that you are not priced above someone who is better than you are, right? Anyway, so back on this. Sorry, the phones and the dings are all happening. Price yourself out of a job. Know your base value. Know the competition. Do you know the market? Do you know what the market will bear? Knowing the competition is the most important thing in pricing yourself, because the truth is that if you are priced strangely, if you're priced too cheap for your ability, that's weird. They're not going to use you. If you're priced above your ability, that's weird. They're not going to use you. Why? Because they're going to shop around. Unless someone just hears your music and just absolutely loves what you do, and they're like, whatever, I'll just pay it. I don't even care. Sometimes you are priced underneath what you are valued for, and people won't say anything, and they'll be like, sweet, he should be charging $2,500, but he's only charging $1,500, and they're not going to say anything. They're going to take that gig, and you just left money on the table. So understanding that they have a Beverly Hills address and drove up to your studio in a brand new McLaren, you know, I would just be conscious of the client you have. Qualify the buyer, okay? That's how you don't price yourself out of a job. You keep your head above water. You work hard to know your market. You tour all the studios around you. You ask what their prices are. As a producer, if I want to go to these studios, I need to know them. Why? Because I need to build a menu. I'm going to hand the menu to my client and say, where do you want to work? I'm not the studio. I'm the producer. I'm the one that gets you the record. Where do you want to record? Which one fits your budget? Which studio fits your vibe? I often go and do Bandit Once down the street at Clear Lake. Why? Because it's a great studio with great gear. I like the owner. It's close to my studio, close to my house. I like the setup. The price is right. It's a great place to go. But what if someone wants to have a video shoot at the best studio in town? If you don't have the information for that and you can't hand them the menu, you're not really the right producer for them, right? So if they say, hey, I was thinking about going up to the Moroccan room at NRG, I better know what that costs, because I'm going to say, oh, great, yeah, I love that room. It costs this. And when they call, you better not have upcharged, because there's an honor thing. My daily rate is this, plus that studio fee, because that's where you chose to go. Sorry, bottle of water. Having a lot of hiccups today. Anyways, Dan Ewens, I hope that answered your question. Now let's go to Mike Bailey. Mike Bailey, how do you ensure you don't get burned when a client gets signed? Okay. It's a good question. I believe that my good friend Colt is going through something similar, and in California, a verbal agreement can be upheld in the court of law. They've made that ruling before. However, you would have to prove that you had a verbal agreement. Granted, if you videotaped it or audio recorded it, it would cease to be a verbal agreement, and now it would be recorded. So, well, I think it would still be a verbal agreement. At least you'd have proof of it, okay? The truth of this matter is that a mixer / audio engineer never gets a leg up when their people get signed. It doesn't happen. Why? Because you don't own the master in any sense of the word. You are a work for hire. So if your job was to hit record on drums, then that's the end of it. Unfortunately, that's the end of it. Now, the great mixers, such as a Dave Pensato, I know that he gets a point on the record. That is his royalty. This is above and beyond the standard. This is a special thing because he's a special guy. And if you want his name on your project, you're going to give him a point. And a guy like Dave, the reality is that a lifetime of 1 points will add up into something significant. That's his retirement. So yes, you should be building that. But the truth is that if you are not at the level where you deserve 1 point, and I don't mean like, yes, I'm talented and I want to get a point. I want to start building that catalog. I'm talking about the competition does not offer points when mixing. So you can't, because that's one of the things. Like, no, I'm not even going to, I don't want to deal with accounting 1 point on a record that's only going to sell 30,000 units max. Right, what is that? 1 point at 30,000 is what? $300? I'm not going to waste my time paying you $300. It's dumb. I'd rather just go to the engineer and give him the $300 now to save me the time I have to account later. But we're talking about major label stuff. That's a lot of money, because 1 point on a million is what, $10,000, I think. Anyways, sorry, math could be funny, but you see what I'm saying? That's a lot of money. So now it's worth accounting too. So how do you ensure you don't get burned when a client gets signed? Well, you have a contract. That is the only way that you can secure that, unless you want to fight in court over a verbal agreement, which you may or may not have. And if you don't have proof that it happened, then you don't have it, all right? Because they're going to be like, I never made that. He's just bummed because it was a work for hire and he wants more. If you signed a work for hire agreement, you signed away your rights, and this argument is moot. However, at the very least, you could try and get a credit, which would be super important. And I think Colt was actually telling me in one of these forums that he is going to have the client sign a credit sheet to make sure he gets the proper credits before he allows the session to leave his hard drive. I think this is smart. It's smart for two reasons. One, because he's not asking for money, so there really should be no problem giving him a credit. Right? I mean, logically speaking, it's not like they're asking for, he says that he wants $1,000 and a credit. Well, no. You know, I mean, no, I don't need that. I paid for the session. I own the session. Because remember, when they paid you, they own the session, right? Unless you had a contract beforehand that stipulates that you get a producer's royalty, an engineer's royalty, a mixing royalty. And you'd be making it up if there's an engineer's royalty, they don't get it. It's a mixer's point, but only at the top tier 1 guys. Producers typically, in my experience, get like 4 points normal. That changes depending on the city and depending on which tier you're at, but it's pretty close to that. My contract is 4 points. So to get a contract that would allow you to get credit, the typical answer for this in this world is what's called a spec deal, or you would need a management contract. This means that this contract, you would then, when you go to the record label, they'll pay you off what's called a finder's fee. This can be anywhere from a couple $1,000s up to $50,000, right? I was going to say half $100,000. I've heard of $50,000 finder fees. I've heard of $100,000 finder fees. If you were the person who brought Britney Spears, you probably got $50,000 to $100,000 easily, and that was a lawyer that did that, as the story goes, walked Britney right in and negotiated the contract, and in exchange for that, because it was the lawyer's contacts and they understood what they had, they, there's $50,000. So if you do not have a contract worth buying out, and that's really where this is at, is that a management contract is that they're going to get signed to the label and they don't want you anymore. You did your job and they're going to have managers that are going to take over from here. Then they would need to buy you out of your contract, and that's where the finder's fee comes from. You found them, you did it, you took them this far, thank you, here's your check, go away. If you do not have a manager's contract, there's no reason to buy you out of a contract, there's no finder's fee, so go away, right? 360 production deal, 360 deal in general would give you across-the-board percentages of everything. Merchandise sales, appearance fees, live show, whatever, depending on how you contracted that 360 deal. This is rare. As a producer, you don't see a lot of these in general unless you are fronting all the money. But if you are fronting the money, then you are the executive producer. So really, you don't need a 360 production deal because you're the executive producer and therefore you own the master. As we recall, the ownership of a master is based on production cost plus market saleability future forward. What that means is that at the beginning of a record's life, the cost of the record to create would be studio power, rental fee, light, AC, all those drinks we drank, engineer's fee, mixing fee, mastering engineer's fee, and the producer's fee all bundled into one lump sum. That's the value. Well, session players, cost of the singer. You know, if the singer's the artist, it's hard to put a price. Excuse me, hard to put a price on that. But say it was a session singer, so you were just building a record. All the musicians got $150. Bass, guitar, drums, singer, fiddle, violin, keyboard player, drum machine programmer, whatever, right? So say there's like $1,250 in session player fees, and then your producer's fee was like $2,000, so now you're up to like $3,500 or whatever after expenses, and so the value of your single song is now the total value. It's the $3,500 master, okay? At which point the client could buy that from you if they wanted to. You could sell the master off to the label. But as this record you happen to have is Hit Me Baby One More Time, Britney gets signed to the label. Now you hand it to them. You're like, all right, here's this record. It's amazing. It's done. It's perfect. And they're like, wow, this is going to be Hit Me Baby One More Time. It's the first single off the record, and you are the executive producer, so you funded the money for it because you're looking for a return on your investment. So then they're going to say, look, we'll give you $5,000 for it, at which point you probably should have said, well, I can see that this is about to get $3 million in marketing invested in her career, so why not give me, I don't know, whatever you decide is fair, plus I want 20% on the record. I want more because I executive produced it. So I want a finder's fee, plus I want a higher percentage of the master. Or you could say, I'll lease you the master for this many units. I'm going to give you at this rate. So there's a ton of ways to work this out. Ideally, you would not sell the master outright, because what happens is the master becomes increasingly valuable as the future forward markability raises its value. When they sold 1 million copies of Hit Me Baby One More Time, it is no longer worth $3,500. That master record from which all the duplicates are made, the press, you know, the plates of which the money come from, becomes now $1 million plus $3,500, right? Because it's the production plus the saleability. So if you were going to sell that at that point, it would be not worth $3,500. It'd be worth $1,035,000 because you've done 1 million downloads. So understanding the value of a master is important. The time when it gets bought and sold is important. So the longer you hold on to it in the right situation, the more valuable it becomes. Maybe you'll have a contract with what they call a sunset clause. So after a certain amount of time, a condition happens. There's a funny misnomer that a sunset clause means one thing, and that's really not true. Sunset clauses can be quite a few different things. It's based on the condition that happens when the sun sets, like a time bomb, all right? So normally a sunset clause returns things to someone. In general, and that's a good thing. So like if you had publishing for 3 years and then the sun sets on our relationship and that returns to you, okay, so this would be another good one where you say, okay, I'm going to give you the rights to release this record. I want 25%, and there's a sunset clause, so after 5 years, all rights come back to me and you have to renew. And at that point, the value's gone up, right, because we sold 1 million units. So understand all this stuff. As always, understand that I am not a lawyer and I cannot give legal advice, so please nothing in this video or any of my videos can be construed as legal advice because I'm not a lawyer. And in all things, I recommend you find a great entertainment lawyer, pay the money to the guy, have someone have your back who can guarantee they will be able to support you legally in court, on paper, and have your back. Nothing beats a good entertainment lawyer. Not all lawyers are snakes. Entertainment lawyers mostly do contract work and they're here to protect us. They're clients, okay? So as in all things, make sure you get a lawyer on your team. The $2,000 you spend is worth it because that contract never expires and you can just update terms or whatever. So $2,000 for a contract that's going to last you your whole life as a template is totally worth it, because consider you might be 40 years as a record producer and that ends up being like a penny a day. So I think I've got through all 4 of these questions. Talked about accounts today. It was a little bumpy of a vlog because I'm a little tired. I had a little scare with the dog this last weekend. Thankfully, she's okay. She's on the couch here chewing on her paws, which is a good sign. That means she's not lethargic anymore. So everybody who said prayers and said thank you for that. 3 days in the vet trying to find out why our dog is not walking and looked like she was passing away was pretty hard. But we're back in business. This week, I'm finishing up the songs for the Country Christmas album and the Modern Country 2 album for Megatracks, which has been a lot of fun working with Brett Boyette. Great songs, JC over there, and Derek, my boys. Great tunes, great productions. I'm stoked to be part of the team. Thank you for that account, because it's ongoing. Already they've come back to me and said they have more stuff in the works. Do a great job. People appreciate that. Always put your best foot forward. This week, I want to challenge everybody watching to document their leads. How many, like literally make a spreadsheet. How many inbound leads did you get this week from your marketing? How many inbound leads did you respond to? How many of those responded back to you? I mean, every stage of this, I want how many of those back responses were you able to qualify the buyer? How many of those qualifications were you able to move into a pitch meeting where you sat down and pitched your contract? Literally, I want you to start documenting this stuff, because the only way to identify trends in your business is data collection. You can't really know for certain. Our brains, we do the same thing day in, day out. We sit in the studio, we push faders, we tweak compressors, we add reverb, and you can't be expected to remember how many leads you had, okay? So manage your data. Collect your inbound stuff so that you can see your trends for your business. Did I have a growth? When I dropped this one marketing thing, I got a lot of leads that week from this specific marketing piece. Tells you that worked, okay? Or it didn't work. I got no leads off this marketing piece. So you need to know this information. Thank you, William Vargas. Thank you, Firetracks. Thank you, Dan Ewens. Thank you, Mike Bailey. I hope your questions were answered correctly. And as always, if you have questions in the future, I post usually on Sundays in the Pensata Students group and around the web. I'll just share it around. Make sure you add me, facebook.com/DrFordMusic, twitter.com/DrFordMusic, YouTube.com/DrFordMusic. There's a trend here. My website, drford.com, drford.com. Thank you for watching this video. Hope that I am helping everybody out there up their business game. I want to see you succeed. Please keep your emails, positive messages coming back. I've gotten so much support for this in the previous episodes that it really inspires me to keep going, and I want to see that you guys are doing good. If you had a good pitch presentation and you're like, dude, I watched your video and it changed my brain and I went and landed the client, tell me, dude. I will read your email on the next vlog, and thank you, because we're all in this together, all right? Succeeding as an Independent, episode 4. Thanks, guys.